All right, superfoods that we're talking about today. Who doesn't want to eat superfoods? I'm Dr. Matt, and I wouldn't mind eating some superfoods. So, if we're going to turn back our biological clock, if we're going to get that glowing skin, if we're going to overcome and I would say prevent cancer, live a life overwhelmed with vigor and vitality, all the things, energy and lack of brain fog, sharp mind, cognition that's through the roof, creativity that's going where we want it to go, then we're probably going to want to have some superfoods come into our being. The only problem with with the standard superfood idea, is that most superfoods are superfoods based off of a slick marketing campaign or marketing scheme, in that their superness is very narrow. It's creating a specific opportunity in the body for an otherwise, I would say, healthy human being who's already getting sufficient amount of nutrition. But that isn't put out there. That you got to be nourished. How this superfood then do what we say it can do for you. So the idea of superfoods is, they have these polyphenols in them, these anti-cancer phytochemicals, and we consume them, and we get all these great benefits, right? If we don't have enough of the nutrients, though, like say vitamins, minerals, amino acids, fatty acids, that enable enzymatic activity, that build and repair our DNA lattice, that form the structure of our being, the structure of our cell membranes, the structure of our mitochondria, and act as literal building blocks for every tissue in our body. Whether it's neurotransmitters, it's our muscles, it's our hormones, our cholesterol molecules, our liver, our kidney, you name it. If we don't have these foundational nutrients, these foundational amino acids, fatty acids, then we're going to underperform, and we're going to live in dysfunction, and we're definitely not going to be super or feel super about our body at all, even if we consume insane amounts of superfoods. And the preponderance of superfoods, they're not super because of what I just listed off. They're super because they have this one particular avenue or phytochemical that's unusual maybe for us to see in abundance in our Western culture. So when you're considering a superfood, sure, the phytochemical compounds, all that's fun. But we need to be thinking, can this food actually sustain me? Can it actually support me over the long term? How many other foods am I going to have to allow this food to do what it's suggesting it can do for me? So in view of the ideas of superfoods, let's ask ourselves, or I'll ask myself, how many other foods, like I said, would I need on board for me to sustain a life of robust health if I start with, say, a steak, or if I start with acai berry, or I start with a piece of Alaskan salmon, a nice fillet, or kale. Like, how long can I exist on kale? So according to our friends at the CDC, the Center for Disease Control, chard and spinach are the top of the list when it comes to foods that we would eat in America here to stave off disease. Like, they have this great nutritional density. And I'll admit, I was actually super surprised when I saw this, because normally when CDC kind of stuff's bringing out stuff, some governmental agency, it's like General Mills, whoever's paying for this information, their food that they've enriched and put out there is the thing that's on the top of the list. So I was actually quite happy to see spinach and chard up on the list of foods to consume to bring health and vitality and vigor. And no doubt, spinach and chard have great benefits for humanity. But there's no human that could last even a month just eating spinach and chard. I mean, we're not cows, so we don't have the capacity to just extract massive amounts of nourishment from these foods. Nor do we have these stomachs to regurgitate food and just mow spinach all day long. In fact, we probably would end up with a bunch of kidney stones long before we'd enjoyed any of the benefits of these superfoods suggested by the CDC. So if you were to take, on the other hand, say eggs, fresh Alaskan salmon, halibut, tuna, or say grass-fed beef, you could sustain your life potentially indefinitely with these food items, right? Because they have the vitamins, they have the minerals, they have the proteins, the fatty acid that we need contained in themselves to build and nourish our being. Now, of course, I'm not recommending we live off eggs, we live off steak, we live off Alaskan salmon. That would be silly. Please don't say that's what I'm saying. But I think if these things are considered our foundation, as opposed to spinach being our foundation, we could not only sustain our life, but we could live at a high level of health. And if they're not part of our foundation, if we don't have these food items, I would say essentially some animal products, and we are going to be undernourished. And we're going to be undernourished consistently. And we can eat all the superfoods we could want, and we're never going to feel like we could feel. So we eat super supportive foods consciously as part of our food routine, as opposed to eating just superfoods, super supportive foods. That's what I'm going to talk about. What would be some of these super extra supportive foods, you might ask? Well, first off, I would say vegetables, specifically broccoli sprouts. In the vegetable family would be broccoli sprouts. Broccoli sprouts would be a super supportive food. And broccoli sprouts are hyperdigestible, as opposed to broccoli, which is not hyperdigestible. It takes a ton of energy to break it down, a ton of energy to extract nutrients. But sprouting, the whole process of sprouting itself, brings nutrients to make them more hyperdigestible for our bodies. So broccoli sprouts would be top of my list when it comes to vegetable matter. And then from fruit, I'd be picking things like blueberries, raspberries, blackberries. These also are, one, hyperdigestible, and they are loaded all the way through with the anthocyanidins and those colors and those pigments. And when you're loaded all the way through with those purples, blues, reds, that is showing that you are a food that has extreme nutrient, pigment, phytochemical density. And you're going to turn off bad genes, you're going to turn on good genes. So the berries, you've got to love them. I know I enjoy them. And then as far as nuts and seeds, I'd be looking at things like Brazil nuts, because Brazil nuts are loaded with selenium. Selenium is often efficient in the industrialized world's dietary routine. And selenium is a massive promoter of glutathione production. Without glutathione, we will cease to exist. We will not detoxify, we will not cleanse appropriately, and our antioxidant power is going to be super low. But remember, when it comes to Brazil nuts, 3 or 4 a day is totally sufficient. You don't need to eat 10, 12, 20 a day. You could actually end up with kind of like some toxicity issues if you're eating in excess with Brazil nuts. But at the same time, it's nothing to fear eating 3 or 4 a day. Then when it comes to like roots or starches, tubers, I'd be thinking like purple potatoes, red or orange fleshed, purple fleshed root vegetables, things like beets, sweet potatoes, because their flesh is all the way through. So the pigment is going all the way through. And when we're looking at a food that is loaded with nutritional value, that has extra benefits for us, we're looking at foods that have a colorfulness that goes all the way through. Because that is saying this is a phytochemically dense food. This is a disease-proof, powerful food. This is a food that's going to turn on awesome genes and turn on genes that would lead to disease, dysfunction, cancer, autoimmunity, all that kind of stuff, arthritis. So look for that color all the way through. And beets are also just awesome because they're loaded with nitrates, and nitrates help with blood flow and act as vasodilators, and just great for the cardiovascular system. So the more pigment, for sure, the better. The darker, the more kind of staining it does, the better, because that means that there's an anti-inflammatory punch all locked up in there. And when it hits your bean, your bacteria are going to be happier. The good guys, the bad guys are going to be ticked off because they're going to die off. And you're just going to be enjoying life more. And that food's just going to be more satiating. All right, so then talking about avocados and olives related to satiation. They're also on my list of super supportive foods because, one, they're hyperdigestible, like super easy to digest, but they're loaded with really life-sustaining fats, and they they make our plates like more enjoyable. So they give us that feeling of sustenance and satisfaction, and feel like, wow, that was a good meal. I just ate. That was satiating is the word I'm looking for. When we add things like avocados and olives to a meal. And on the other side, olives are just loaded with vitamin E. In fact, they're one of our top concentrations of vitamin E. And so if you're lacking vitamin E, hormones are going to be wacky, eyes are going to be dry, hair's not going to be so great, skin's going to be problematic, disease dysfunction, much higher level, because vitamin E is a potent antioxidant. And like I said, it's a big deal for our hormones. And especially the estrogenic front for ladies. Vitamin E does a lot to support proper hormonal metabolism. All right, finally, I know I'm kind of throwing a lot of superfoods at you, but finally, I want to remind you of a specific, it's kind of like an herb / food, because there's not a whole lot of calories in it, but garlic. Garlic should be considered on every list of super supportive foods because it is a antimicrobial powerhouse. Has so many immune balancing and enhancing effects. It's loaded with sulfur, and we need sulfur to support all things related to detoxification within the liver, glutathione production, and it's even been shown to like help lower blood pressure, decrease excess clotting. That's great for the cardiovascular system. There's studies related to dementia risk, it being beneficial, and there was this one 2017 study that within just 4 weeks of eating 2 servings of garlic a day, these people with metabolic syndrome, which is like obesity, high cholesterol, high blood pressure, their blood pressure drops significantly just two times a day eating garlic. So garlic intake is so promising. There's so many studies on it for prostate cancer, colon cancer, stomach cancer, esophageal cancer, both as preventative and parts of treatments. And garlic also helps kill off a lot of different types of yeast, both orally and topically. And it's also just it feeds are good for it. So garlic is a super supportive food. And then finally, one more, just like last one I just got to mention, is your friend the egg yolk. I'm just bringing this up because so many people are doing whites, not eating yolks, because of their coaches telling them this. Their protein, they get a certain amount of protein, but they can't have a certain amount of fat, kind of thing, because they're counting macros instead of micros. They're thinking about, I got to meet my macros, get my certain amount of macronutrients, my certain amount of protein, and forgetting that whole foods wins the day every single time, especially over the long term. So I would suggest yolks because iodine, got to eat your yolks because iodine is often deficient in the American population because we're not eating like much seaweed. We don't, a lot of people aren't using iodized salts anymore. And guess what? Egg yolks are a fantastic source. Like 16 to 20% of your daily iodine can be in a single egg yolk. So it's probably the easiest place for us to get iodine in our diet in America. And, it's just an egg yolk. That's all you got to do. So remember, without iodine, your thyroid cannot do what your thyroid wants to do. And that is provide massive life, metabolic activity to your being. All right. I hope this is helpful on the super supportive foods. Remember, super supportive foods, not just superfoods. I would love to hear what you have to say regarding super supportive foods, what your personal super supportive foods are, and maybe it can help spur somebody on to add one of these super supportive foods to their food regimen. And who knows? They could be feeling like, man, I'm feeling down now, and 3 months from now, like, whoa, because I've been adding these super supportive foods to my foundational nutrition, my life expectancy of where I'm going is just going up, up, up. All right, I'm Dr. Matt. I hope this is helpful. Please like, subscribe, send this on to any friends, colleagues who are, jamming these purples and green powders and forgetting to consume foundational nutrition coupled with super supportive foods.